Hey everybody, welcome back to a special bonus episode of Rehash, a Web3 podcast. I'm your host, Diana Chen, and today we are recapping Season 2 of Crypto the Game, CTG. Some of you might have heard of it, some of you might have played, some of you might have been observing from the sidelines. It's a 10-day game that was all-consuming for people who were in it. This is a recorded live stream that took place on Friday, April 19th. We are speaking with CTG team members, Dylan, Tyler, and Bryan. And then we have 3 players on as well. Actually, 4 players. The first is Eva Beylin, who was part of the winning team, player number 733. She'll talk all about that and how her and David Phelps and other members of that team were able to secure the win at the very last minute. And then we also have Will Hunter, who was another one of our finalists. He was top 3 for quite a while, and I think ended top 4. And he had a really cool strategy too that he campaigned on in order to win the game. And then finally, we have Nico and Katy. Nico was a finalist as well. He was player number 703, and he ran on a campaign to have everybody vote for him to win the money so that he could get his girlfriend Katy back, because Katy believed that Nico voted her out of the game. There is so much tea spilled in this episode. I'm so excited for all of you guys to listen. If you have any interest in Crypto the Game, if you were following along at all, if you were playing the game, if you maybe want to play in a future season of the game and want to get some strategy tips, some alpha from both the CTG team as well as some of the players, this is the episode that you'll want to listen to. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Dylan, Tyler, and Bryan from the CTG team, as well as our finalists, Eva Beylin, Will Hunter, Nico, and his girlfriend, or we'll find out whether she's still his girlfriend or not, Katy. So enjoy. That was the alpha chat, but yeah, how's it going?
It's good. It's good. I'm bummed I missed your strategy talk, though. I'm curious what yours was.
Well, so I played an anon game, and I went in with a catfish account, essentially. So I had like a fake account I was using. Hey, Dylan, what's up? I had a fake account I was using on Telegram. Like I had my real account on Telegram in all the chats, and then I had a catfish account. And so through both of those, like I was in all the chats, but people didn't realize, like I could pledge allegiance to like certain groups with my real identity where people knew me, and then pledge allegiance with like my fake identity in other chats. Bryan, what's up?
Hey, Bryan. Sorry. Took me like.
Thanks for joining. Nice to meet you. Sorry, Dylan, were you about to say something?
Oh, no, just more of a comment on PFPs on crypto Twitter in general. Like someone could have an NFT of a guy and I'll be like, oh, he, and then it's like, oh no, I'm not a guy. It's like, oh,
yeah.
You assume because they're, I don't know, their doodle has a mustache or something.
I was just telling Ty that when he hopped on. I hopped on 30 minutes beforehand to like answer questions from the Rehash community about my gameplay, so I don't have to focus on like how I played it like during this chat, and to like also answer questions that I don't want recorded necessarily. But one of the things I was talking about is my big confession from the season was it had to do with somebody who had a PFP and like a gender neutral name that I was very convinced was a girl, and didn't find out until like later on that was a guy. But I saved them and tried to play a good game with them because I was like, they're a woman, the female tribe, like we'll get together or whatever. And so I have to keep them around, even though they're like really annoying me. And I'm going to vote out the guy instead. And it turns out it was a guy all along. So yeah, no, you're totally right.
Maybe that's a good strategy. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to start this conversation with the CTG team. Actually, I should probably start by just giving a real quick recap of the game for anyone in the chat who didn't play and was just following from the sidelines. So real quick, Crypto the Game Season 2, it ran from April 8th until April 17th. So it's a 10-day game. There were 800 players to start in 10 tribes, so 80 players per tribe. So day 1, no challenge. Each tribe voted off 5 people. And this is just like the requirement. What actually ended up happening is like not necessarily these numbers. Day 2, there was a lens challenge. Each tribe voted off 3 people. Day 3 was a wormhole challenge. It was basically the game Snake rebranded to Worm because Wormhole is a sponsor. Each tribe voted off 12 people. Day 4 was the Adidas challenge. There was a lot of drama with that, and there ended up being no vote that night. Day 5 was the everything token challenge. Each tribe voted off 10 people. Day 6 was the merge, which the 10 tribes became 5 tribes. There's no challenge, but each tribe had to vote off 10 people at the end of the day. Day 7 was Poat Breaker, which is just Brick Breaker, the old computer game rebranded as Poat Breaker. And each tribe had to vote off 25 people. Day 8, there was a full merge. So everybody merged together. There were no more tribes. It was an individual game. And 75 people had to be voted off. Day 9 was the Uniswap challenge. There had to be 69 people voted off total. And then day 10 was the final vote. There were 42 finalists at the end, and we're going to speak to 3 of them after this. So that's just a quick TLDR recap. To start, I wanted to ask, out of the 800 players that started the game, do you have any numbers on how many were doxxed, like how many connected their Twitter account and how many were anon?
Not off the top of my head. I want to say it was roughly 3/4 doxxed, 1/4 anon. Brian and Ty, correct me if I'm wrong, but at least it felt to me that it was mostly doxxed.
2 decided not to maybe use their personal Twitter, but they did connect a Twitter. And so, and then
that was a big strategy.
Yeah. Also with the NFT transfers, when you do transfer to a new wallet, then you have the opportunity to choose again if you're anon or connect your Twitter. And so we saw a ton of people who would cycle through like 2 or 3 different accounts throughout their season, which was pretty interesting.
Might be worth just taking a step back, but just like reiterating the NFT based mechanic in the entry for season 2. Would that help?
Yeah, that would help. Tell us about how you decided to set it up that way, because last season it wasn't the case.
Yeah, so season 1, the extent of the on-chain nature of the game was that you essentially sent 0.1 ETH to our multisig. That was the buy-in that comprised of the pot that everyone was competing for. And then at the end of the season, we essentially just sent the pot to the one winner's address. For season 2, you mint an NFT, which represented your spot in the game. When you get voted out, that NFT turns from a player NFT to a jury NFT, because on the finale, everyone that holds a jury NFT casts their votes for the winner. But because of that, and unlike season 1, where we required you to connect your Twitter account and essentially play as yourself, for season 2, we really didn't want someone, like hypothetically, you connected your Twitter and you were playing as yourself, but then you sold or transferred your NFT halfway through. We wouldn't want that new holder to come back in and inherit your identity, basically. So we gave everyone the ability to essentially play anonymously if they want, but then also every time the NFT changed owners, you were reprompted with the ability to connect your Twitter. And we also saw, I think, a very, very clear night 1 strategy was everyone just voted off the anonymous players, which is ironic because an anonymous player ended up winning in the end. But a very quick, like, day 2 strategy of those that maybe regretted their decision to not connect their Twitter, transferred the NFT to a different wallet that they own. So they were reprompted with the ability to connect their Twitter. So it might have been closer to 50-50 from the get-go. But as we got closer to the end, more and more people decided to connect their Twitter to view themselves as, I guess, less of a target.
I think it's also interesting to note that people had so many different definitions of anon throughout the season, I feel like. Yeah. Like there's like the truly anonymous, like you bought in with an anonymous wallet that nobody can trace. You didn't connect your Twitter at any point. Like you're literally completely untraceable. And then there's like the anons who have an identity behind them, whether real or fake. So like I had an identity behind my player number, but it just wasn't me. Like it was somebody else. And I feel like especially in the early rounds, a lot of people conflated anonymous with inactive, when it was like we really wanted to get out the inactive people who weren't playing the game. Like people who wanted to play the game deserve to stay in the game and play the game at least for a little bit.
Especially on, I guess, like team challenges. If someone is like only registers 1 score and like is, you know, has a day job and is dragging down the whole tribe, it's probably worth it to like trim the fat.
Exactly. And we saw there were pros and cons to trimming the fat early on, right? Like sometimes you want more brains, other times you don't. So that was interesting to see as well. Did you guys have any predictions about who would win, like a doxxed person or an anon?
No, honestly, I think that like one of the reasons why I've been so excited to build this is that you genuinely have no idea who's going to win. Is someone who's really good at the challenges considered an asset and should be kept around? Is someone that's really good at challenges considered a threat? Because in season 1 we merged, and you would assume that in season 2 we'll merge, so it turns to an individual game. Is someone who's doxxed and has a large following considered a a leader within their tribe, or are they considered someone that maybe has too much and doesn't need the money? Yeah, honestly, like I think we've seen with both seasons, the end result is completely unpredictable.
I was just going to say too, with like last season, MFL just kind of came up from nowhere, at least according like to us, because since we're not in the Telegram chats, we're not seeing like what's happening day to day. We have no idea. And so we might just see on Twitter, like what's happening and just through people's reactions. But then for someone to kind of come up from behind basically, or be the most like wholesome person and win because like everyone just loves them so much. That was just something we definitely didn't expect or didn't see coming. And so again, same thing this season.
I will say one thing that has held true for both seasons is that essentially on the finale, the entire community essentially like rallies behind one winner. There was a pretty wide margin between first and second place in season 1 and season 2. And I think that is just because, well, I guess one, like this community is so strong and like, I feel like-minded, but then also in order to win this thing, I think you really need to have the right story, the right narrative, the right reasons for votes on the end. And yeah, it seems like the most wholesome or heartwarming outcome has happened both times, which is really nice to see.
Well, so let's get to the finale, because there was quite a bit of controversy that happened in the finale. I think a lot of people had different ideas. I mean, we talked about this last time you guys were on the podcast in Denver as well. Is like last season, it seemed like the big debate was between splitters and non-splitters. Should we split the final pot with people who deserved, who played a good game and all deserved it, or should one person take all the money for themselves? And that debate happened again this season, but I think there were even more questions as well. Like, I think the whale thing was a big thing with how the NFT mechanism was structured this season. Most people didn't want to see a whale take it all. And people definitely were snooping around and trying to figure out who the whales were the whole time. And so that was one thing. And then I think another controversy with the winners, player 733, who won the game, the charge was led by Eva and David. The other criticism I heard a lot of was, this wasn't a player who had their NFT from day one, who played an honest game, who really put in the effort and the time to win this thing and deserved to win. It was two people who bought in at the last minute, or, was transferred the NFT 24 hours prior to the final vote, was donating the money to a cause. And whether you support the cause or not, it's you could set up a fundraiser to support Tornado Cash and to support Roman and Alexi outside of the context of this game. Why did it have to happen within the context of this game, which, for game purists and the Survivor fans and stuff, which I know, Dylan, you're one of them. I think a lot of those people felt that an individual person who played the game well should have won.
Yeah, I mean, I guess while I am a fan of the show Survivor, I'm a CTG purist first and foremost now. But I think two things. One is the beauty of this game is that the players decide who the winner is. So there could be debates and they can be loud, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the vote. And what we saw was a very, very, I don't want to say unanimous, but it was a very clear victory for player 733 that was decided amongst the players. So we can't have an opinion and we have no say on who wins as the founders of this game. But the beauty of it, like I said, is that the players ultimately crown the winner. And that's what we saw here. And then the second thing is in building this NFT based entry and the ability to buy, sell, transfer slots and votes, who's to say that this isn't exactly how it was intended to be? So I think each season, what I think we're all really trying to get across is a unique case study in human behavior. And these are just big social experiments at the end of the day. I think season 1 almost had this David versus Goliath theme where MFL, who was, largely unknown on crypto Twitter and doesn't speak a word of English and lives in rural Japan, ended up beating all these VCs and crypto Twitter influencers and taking home the pot. Season 2, I think we saw this new NFT-based mechanic and players knew how to take advantage of that for the win. But every season will have its own theme, its new twist, its new chaos, its new drama. We haven't committed to or confirmed that season 3 will have an NFT-based entry. Like I said, every season is going to have the high level idea of many will play, one will win, but with new twists inside.
Yeah. How about Ty and Bryan? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on, if you were players in the game, what outcome would you have wanted to see happen, or just like theoretically, like would you have supported an individual player or a cause or splitting, or where you stand on that?
Bryan, you want to take this one?
We're not allowed to comment on what we want as
fair.
the creators of this game. I don't want to speak for Bryan and Ty, but we've spoken at length for the past 5 months about the outcomes here. And it's like our responsibility is to create the mechanic and put it out into the universe and like let the players decide.
Totally. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no worries at all. I did have a couple of other questions too about how this season was structured differently from last season. So the first is that you guys decided not to show the number of votes that people were receiving in the UI, which made it made the game more challenging for sure. Mm-hmm. Why did you decide to take the number of votes out so people couldn't see?
It was definitely a lot more anxiety inducing, I heard. So yes. That's great.
1,000%. Thank you so much for that.
That was definitely the goal. So that was something we all talked about for a bit after season 1. We felt that there were so many times that when someone was on the chopping block where they've received votes, there would kind of hit a point where there's just no hope for them, that once you have like 2 or 3 votes, you just kind of give up and you're like, all right, well, I guess I'm eliminated, better luck next time. And we just wanted to kind of remove that feeling of, first of all, spoiling what's going to happen to you. So drawing that out a little bit longer. So you have to kind of wait till the end to figure out if you did survive or you were eliminated. And then also just try to engage more team coordination, that if you did see your name on the chopping block, it didn't mean that you're eliminated. There still is a really good chance that you can come back, you can be saved, if you are able to coordinate with your team. And just in driving that engagement was kind of our main priority. And then for the final vote, we also just same kind of concept. We removed the vote counter there for how many votes you had, just so that it wasn't groupthink, that people were kind of required to think as an individual, not just see a high number and be like, oh, I want to be a part of the winner. So those 2 things really drove it. I know, Bryan, you had your own opinions on why.
I mean, that's why, like, I think we saw really high engagement numbers throughout the days compared to last season. And I think part of it is because last season, like, if you saw like someone with like 5 votes in the first place, that person would end up with like 13 votes at the end of the night because everyone just saw that high number and then they just kept voting for him. But now that's hidden. Like, I think we saw more evenly distributed number of votes throughout the nights. And we actually saw a lot of saving happening too, when they saw like some people on the tail end of the list, which was actually pretty cool to see. So yeah, definitely brought up the engagement and anxiety. And I'm the one actually tallying the votes. So when you see the screen of tallying votes, sometimes I purposely don't tally the votes for like a minute because I just want you guys to hear the heartbeat for longer. On the final day, I was like, all right, I'm going to wait like 2 minutes.
So cruel.
So cruel.
Even though it takes like 100 milliseconds to process.
Oh man, that's brutal.
At the end of the day, like I was just going to say, like, the goal is to make this an entertaining and dramatic reality show. And like, I would compare it to, I don't know if you watched American Idol in the early days or still do, but like Ryan Seacrest would say, like, right after this commercial break, and everyone would be waiting with bated breath. So we're just trying to create an entertaining reality show. And those dramatic pauses and those moments are really when you feel like you're a contestant on a reality show. At least I would imagine.
That's true.
The heartbeat gets to you.
Oh God, tell me about it. People did catch on to the fact that the votes were ranked from most to least. And so people would basically like stare at where, especially in the later rounds, where the 1 vote to 2 vote cutoff was. And there would be people monitoring that and like updating the chats like, all right, this number is at the 2 vote mark now. This number is at the 2 vote mark. Because if you have 1 vote and you're thinking maybe I can be saved, then like once you get that second vote, you know it's over for you.
Yeah.
You know, like in the later rounds.
I'll say one thing though that might throw a wrench into that. We didn't live update the votes this season either. And so it was kind of bulk updates, as in like every 10 seconds or so you'd get a bunch of votes. So yes, that's a good strategy, but you also don't know if that player received 1 or received 5 votes, because we're giving it all at once rather than 1 at a time.
Gotcha. Interesting.
I was just going to ask you, I'm curious if any saving happened.
I was actually saved one night early on.
Oh, so you were at risk.
It was a mistake because I was trying to play an anon game from the beginning. I didn't really want to dox my number early on. And so everybody had like circulated these spreadsheets and stuff. And I just purposefully like didn't write my number in the spreadsheet. And we were coordinating a vote, I think on like night 4 or something. And they thought my number was an inactive player. And they just assigned somebody, and I saw it in the chat. I was like, oh, fuck. And so I like went in. I was like, wait, guys, this is me. And then everybody was like, oh, no, like we got to save her. And they like even made this hashtag that was like save. I don't want to say what my name was, but like save name, like hashtag save me. And I did end up getting saved that night.
That's awesome.
But it was like a mistake, like a coordination mistake, and not
it's so cool that there's that mechanic in there too, that there is the saving mechanic, that people figured that out and people did that. Because that's one of the coolest moments, is when you're stressed, you see your name on the chopping block, and then you're able to coordinate with people to get yourself knocked off. That's amazing.
Yeah. No, that was definitely, my heart rate was probably like not healthy that night. Another question I wanted to ask that was different about this season than last season is this season you guys decided to merge full tribes together instead of doing a complete shuffle. What went behind that decision?
Honestly, I think just trying to mix things up and not do the same thing every season. I think folks were expecting a shuffle. And for those listening that might not have played season 1 at kind of, I'd say the halfway point in season 1, we essentially just redrew the tribes and everyone was shuffled. And this time we did something called the convergence, where we took essentially like 5 pairs of 2 and did a mini merge. So it went from 10 tribes to 5 tribes. I had an instinct going into season 2 that a strategy would be to trim the fat, because people thought they knew the game from playing season 1. So it was almost a way to counter that, because hypothetically, and I think we saw this with the purple tribe, very early on, they got rid of like almost half of their players because they wanted to keep like a very core elite group for the kind of like average base leaderboard challenges. But then I think as soon as we did the convergence, they were just kind of like picked off. But the other thing was just to kind of see the different strategies that would happen. One being exactly what happened with purple, where you get picked off one at a time. One where, now we're all a new tribe and let's all put our previous alliances aside and figure this out as a new converged tribe. And then the other is just kind of like pure chaos, and like, do you make secret side alliances with members of the original tribe that you weren't on, really just to kind of keep players on their toes and keep things fresh.
So having done it both ways now, do you guys have a preference on which way you think worked better?
I think the season 3 one will be great. I'm excited about the season 3 twist. I'm joking. I definitely don't. I mean, I don't want to speak for Bryan and Ty, but like, I personally don't want to just like do the same thing every season. So there's like a number of different ways we can mix things up throughout the season.
I agree with that. As a player, I agree with that too. Like this, having the exact same thing every season would just, people would develop a playbook and it would be less exciting.
Well, even literally the day that season 2 ended, Bryan and I got some much deserved beers and just kind of like finally chilled. And it's funny because we were ready to like turn off our brains and just like not think about Crypto the Game. We ended up spending like 4 hours straight just talking about the season 2 game mechanics and like what we want to improve, like what went wrong, what feedback we had. And so I think we already have it going of like, okay, how can we improve this? How can we change it up? What went right? What didn't? So we're ready to go already.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't mind, can you share some of that? Like what you think were the things that went best about season 2? What were like the least successful parts? How you're thinking about that?
Yeah, I don't think we'll touch on anything that we have planned just because it's so up in the air still. But in terms of season 2, I think personally, I just loved the new voting mechanics a lot more. I felt like season 1, it was really depressing when you saw your name go on the board because you're pretty much just gone. And the fact that you said you were saved, I've talked to so many people who said they were saved. That's an awesome feeling to see that that's able to happen. That's a new mechanic that's developing. And so leaning into that would be amazing. I think this season, just a little bit of feedback we got is that a lot of the people who spoke up or tried to be leaders in their tribe just immediately were painted with a target on their back. And so that mechanic in general just frustrated me because as kind of a Survivor purist as well, someone who's like watched the show and also just a huge fan of all game shows and wanting to instill a lot of that like skill-based factor into our game, it is kind of frustrating or disappointing when you see like the leaders of a tribe just get voted out by randos or catching just like a straight vote. And so that was a bit frustrating for me. So we're just kind of thinking through of like, how can we improve upon that? What can we change up to potentially, make that less of a dynamic?
Yeah. What about you, Bryan?
I think the NFT marketplace mechanic is definitely new. We didn't want to like change anything around it or like inhibit behaviors or make rules around it. We just want to see like what that would do as almost like a experiment too. Like honestly, we had all the data and we're spectating the game live and we could not expect how the game would go, even like day to day, right? So like, I think it was wrong for us to put rules around or like set CTG way to do things. So I think that was a good thing that we did this season. And then maybe next season we'll like add some twists around those things to, I don't know, add some favor to certain type of players. Maybe, we don't know. We'll talk about it, but I think that was a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I unfortunately don't live in New York anymore, so I wasn't able to join the finale drinks, but I'll just quickly say, I think my personal favorite thing about this season was the more on-chain challenges. I don't know how you felt about the sponsor challenges, but we had about 5 or 6 sponsors this season, and they all kind of came with different crypto native and on-chain sleuthing and mechanics. And I think one of the biggest pieces of feedback after season 1 was that this wasn't crypto enough. So we really tried to lean into that, in particular with the Lens Challenge, where we had people going in and out of hey.xyz and onto Orb and collecting posts and digging through OG videos and posts on the different platforms on behalf of our partners. We did one with Uniswap where folks were, I don't know if you made it to the finale or this was the final challenge, but you essentially had to like dig through the Uniswap white paper and go onto the Uniswap web app and find different clues in order to win immunity. So we really tried to just take the entire on-chain ecosystem as our playground and hide immunities and challenges all over the internet, basically.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed the challenges more this season. I think the Lens Challenge was the smartest brand partnership ever. Like, you got so many people spending so many hours digging through like every Lens app. But overall, I did enjoy the challenges more. The everything token one, somebody on our tribe actually just solved it without identifying themselves and without like explaining how they solved it. So I still don't even know how that one was solved.
Great one. Yeah. So for those that didn't play, the Everything Token is a book by Scott from A16Z, and he's also teaches at Harvard Business School in kind of the blockchain department with one of his co-professors. They wrote this book called The Everything Token that's all about NFTs and Web3. And within the book itself is a puzzle. And we had known that and essentially reached out to them to see if we could leverage that in-book puzzle for one of our challenges. So we essentially like gave everyone a clue, which led to discovering that this was the book, which led to the puzzle within the book, which led to the solution on our website. So I don't know who solved it in your tribe, but they must have somehow had a copy of the book or very quickly ran to a bookstore and solved it themselves.
I think there were some intertribal cabals where they shared the answers and didn't want to identify themselves. I think that's really what happened. But
nice.
Yeah, maybe also they solved it. The one challenge that wasn't as successful was the Adidas challenge. I just wanted to ask about that, like how that was set up. I know last season you said, the first challenge last season actually wasn't meant to be that like book hunt, but you just needed a last minute thing. And I was wondering if the Adidas thing was similar to that, because I know it started a few minutes later than usual. And I was wondering.
No, definitely not a last minute challenge. Okay. I think with anything that is in partnership with a brand, especially a Fortune 500 iconic brand, like that takes months of negotiation and planning. So we started those conversations right after season 1 with Adidas. And I think the big takeaway is that like the fact that we partnered with Adidas, 3-month-old bootstrap 3-person startup is all of a sudden partnering with an iconic brand, especially in Web3, is insane and was kind of universally praised when we announced that we were partnering with Adidas that morning. I think what we might have misstepped with was the challenge mechanic itself, which was auctioning off NFTs and essentially asking our players to bid real money on these in-game collectibles with in-game advantages. Definitely like I had looked at other video games in the space that had in-game skins and in-game advantages and things like that, but zero regrets with regards to partnering with Adidas. Would do it again in a heartbeat. I think we just heard our players loud and clear, and we need to think through the in-game mechanic itself.
Yeah, I personally, I would love to see some sort of like touch grass real life challenge, just because it is such an online game. I thought the Adidas one in particular would have been a great opportunity to like, get everybody on a step tracker on their phone. I think Adidas actually has a crypto or a Web3 related one that's kind of where my head was at thinking, that's what the challenge was going to be. But something like that I think would have been cool, just to like still bring the team together and like have a team effort, but get people actually out and doing some stuff. I know that would have been challenging in Europe or Asia where it's like 2 a.m. and you can't really like go outside. And
No, I mean, my wife works at Fitbit. I guess now Google like Pixel Watch, but has been in the like fitness step tracking game for almost 10 years now. So maybe for season 3.
Yeah, I would love that. Cool. Any final thoughts before we switch over to the players?
Honestly, thanks so much for playing again. I know it is a huge time commitment and it's incredibly engaging. And just in looking at the numbers on our side, like we know how much time you all spend on our platform and on our site. And from truly the bottom of our hearts, like, thank you so much for playing. It means a lot. We built this thing because, at least speaking for myself, it's the game that I always wanted to play online with my friends. And it's so refreshing to see it resonate with players. And it really means a lot.
Thanks so much for building the game. And I was saying this earlier before all of you hopped on, but I was telling the group that I was actually, for the first 5 days of the challenge, I was actually in Arizona at my friend's 40th birthday party / like law school reunion thing. And none of those people are in crypto at all. And I got them so hooked on the game. Like I told them what I was doing, why I was on my phone all the time, like sorry for being rude, sort of thing. But they got so into it and invested. They were all like, every day they'd be like, what's the challenge today? Like, what's the game today? And then at night they'd be like, did you make it? Did you get voted off? Did you make it? And they're like, hell yeah, like you made it another day. And afterwards I was like, you guys should play next season, And
That's
none of them even have a crypto wallet. And some of them were like, honestly, like, yeah, this might be worth getting a crypto wallet to play something like this because it looks so fun. So I mean maybe we onboard the next billion through crypto the game.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? I think that story you just shared is something that I've heard just in the past few days from like dozens and dozens of players. I think personally speaking, like it seems so antiquated to sit on your couch and watch 20 strangers compete in a reality show. And this new technology and like new version of the internet makes it possible for the entire world to compete in a reality show, essentially. You look at MFL, who won season 1, there's no scenario in which he could have applied to and been cast in a traditional reality show, let alone win it. And we're making these types of formats and shows mass and participatory and bring it to the people, basically.
100%. Well, thank you so much for building it. Can't wait to see what season 3 brings. I know it's too early probably to talk about that, but hopefully we can get some alpha from you guys in a little bit and know when to block off my calendar for the next 10 days.
Yes. Amazing.
Cool. Well, thank you guys so much. Yeah, thanks so much for being here. If you want, you can hang around. You can switch your video off, whatever you want to do. The players, if you guys are still around and want to switch your videos on, I'd love to shift over to you guys, Eva, Will, and Nico and Katy. Compared to most of my friends in Web3, I'm not the most online person. And with how fast things move in this space, it can be really challenging to keep up with the newest projects and what's trending. That's why I loved Forage, a community-curated front page for launches shaping on-chain culture. A Forage launch page combines a press release and a commemorative mint into a sleek single page where they garner support in the form of mints. Projects receiving more mints are bumped to the top of the page, which means I can finally stop doom scrolling or worrying about missing an important launch and simply check Forage to stay up to date on what's happening on-chain. And as an added bonus, Forage uses protocol rewards, so supporters receive a referral reward each time someone mints through their referral link. Go to forage.xyz to get started today. Hey guys, what's up? Eva, congrats on winning the game, or at least being part of the winning player team. Why don't we start? I think most people in the chat have played the game or at least are aware, but the quick TLDR is Eva was part of player 733, which won the game. And I'll let you talk more about that in a second. Will was hanging on strong the top 3, I think until the last minute when I actually don't know who that third place person was. I thought it was an anonymous person, but people were messaging me saying they knew who they were and they have a really cool story and stuff. And then Nico, you were definitely in the running as well. I thought you had the most entertaining campaign on Twitter. I was very much enjoying being part of that and shitposting along with you guys. And I've gotten quite a few people in my DMs giving me stories about Katy and how she played the game. So I don't know if people in the chat are going to speak up or if Katy wants to talk about it herself, but I definitely have heard some things. So why don't we start with Eva, if you want to just give us a quick TLDR, and then I'll move through each of you, just like a minute telling people what your campaign was for people who weren't paying too much attention in the game.
Yeah, so I was player 67 throughout the game. I originally got eliminated day 8. And around day 9, there was a lot of info that started coming out about moles and deception. We found out we were betrayed within our tribe. There were these like group chats and hit lists. There was just so much sort of messiness going on that a few of us realized that the end game, which I hadn't really thought about until that point, maybe I was just playing naively, the end game was going to be either a whale or a cabal. And there was sort of these trackers of like, how many jury NFT whales are there now? How many do they have? And so we realized that all these efforts to rally around a wholesome person probably just would be futile. And a lot of us just weren't really aligned with that cabal or whale win, just given the feeling of deception. A lot of people literally felt lied to. And so a few of us got together and thought, hey, we'd love to see a happy ending that more people are aligned with, because it was clear there was quite a few people sort of butthurt or upset about kind of where the end game was going. And so we had originally wanted to acquire an NFT, taking kind of advantage of those NFT mechanics. But then just about an hour after we announced it, player 733 actually volunteered their NFT. And I don't know if they'd held it the whole game, but it was their NFT. So it really was a voluntary decision to join in.
And then talk about the cause a little bit that the money ended up going to, for anybody who's not aware.
Yeah, so for anyone that's not aware, Tornado Cash developers Alexei Pertsev and Roman Storm are facing persecution over the last few years, and especially over the last month. So I actually think that, like a lot of people are worried that this would happen again in future seasons. I think this was like a very specific set of circumstances that led to this outcome. We saw last season MFL one that was an individual player. This season, I think the timing of the trial and everything that was going on and the unfolding, coupled with the theme, and then coupled with a large number of people kind of not feeling great about who they wanted to vote for, was sort of the perfect recipe for people feeling very aligned with this cause being the one that won. I think especially given that we're LARPing Anon Island, like everyone loves being Anon, but then when we actually get down to the building, the people who are building it are the ones that are really paying for that. So that was really the goal.
100%. Very cool. And you guys got a ton of support. I think the gap between first place and second place ended up being like, you guys had like 3 times more votes than second place or something. So it really wasn't a close race at the end of the day at all. So congrats again. Kudos to you guys for pulling that off. That was a really, really good effort from you and David especially. And I know there were 5 multi-sig signers total. So everybody else who was involved as well. Okay, over to you, Will. You had a really cool campaign too. That was, I thought, really creative. I love seeing people experiment in the space and come up with really new and cool like ways of doing things. Can you talk a little bit about what your campaign was and where you had planned to put the money towards if you had won?
Yeah. So I realized, I think once we got to merge, and there was a lot of like fear that like one vote could snipe you, that the best strategy was just for me to not say anything and just become invisible. But then that would backfire in the finale because no one knew who I was. And like I saw in season 1, like the person that won was wholesome. And so I'm like, all right, crap. So I need to prepare for the finale and just keep my head low. And so I think 3 days out, I like hit up the co-founder of IYK where I work. And I'm like, hey, I have an idea. I know people have talked about pot splitting before, but like, let's make it like super decentralized, like super trustless. And I'll take half the pot and the other people can take the other 50%. And so we whipped it together with some help from some pretty awesome friends at 6551 and ENS. And the mechanic was cool. It would have been a lot cleaner if we had on-chain voting, which I like was bugging Dylan in Twitter. I'm like, please, for the finale, do it on-chain. But since we couldn't do that, basically you would delegate your vote to my NFT. And then I would just like toggle through all the NFTs and vote for myself. And then at the end of the day, if I won, basically we'd just split all the ETH that was in my NFTs balance. So yeah, 65451, if no one knows what that is, it's token bound accounts. It allows for your NFT to own other NFTs and to own ETH and other tokens, which is pretty cool. So yeah, that was kind of the crux of what I wanted to launch. This doesn't really come out of nowhere. Before IYK, I worked at Tessera or Fractional.art. So I've always really been passionate about just like collectively owning things with friends, either people you know or anonymously. And so that was kind of the narrative that I tried to spin.
Did you ever at one point think about taking the whole pie yourself, or is that like what you would have wanted to do? You just didn't think that fit into a narrative that could have won?
Yeah, I would like if I like clearly could have won. Like I think Ted is a good example. Like she had a great narrative, and like if I had a great narrative, then yeah, I would have I would take the 72 ETH. But in the end of the day, I didn't put the most amount of effort in the game, and I knew that. So I was like, this is probably a good angle for me.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, and then over to you, Nico. So for your final campaign, you put out a Twitter thread or a tweet pleading for everybody to vote for you because Katy thought that you had voted her out in the previous round, and she was really mad at you, and she was going to break up with you, and you were going to die alone if you didn't win. So how did that go for you?
Well, she's talking to me now, so.
Yeah.
Woo! Love to see it.
I still think he voted for me. Let's just put that out there. But
did you? This is the time to confess, Nico. If you voted for Katy, this is the time to confess.
Nope, did not vote for her.
Who did you vote for?
I voted for Anon 550.
Oh, there you go, Katy.
Sure. As soon as the game ended, I realized that when I was figuring out my strategy for season 3, that Nico was going to play a critical role. So I got over it. We're going to make it through.
You need me as your pawn for next season.
Going into the game, did you guys have a joint strategy together? You guys went in together. You were planning on, playing. Like, what was your strategy going in as more of like a duo?
Yeah, we didn't. We decided that we'd play our own games for the most part. And we actually didn't really converge until later, but we did cause some chaos together along the way. Because after the first 2 nights, we realized that teams Purple, first of all, Purple was extremely coordinated, as you know. We knew that was going to be a huge threat for everybody endgame. And then we also saw Silver team as a huge threat. And so we started to come up with ideas of like, hey, how can we start to destabilize the other teams so that our teams have a little bit of a better chance? And so we did some stuff where like, one, we bought an NFT on Silver team. And then we thought that since the first game was a team immunity challenge, that if somebody was to hack the game or cheated the game, the whole team would be disqualified, because we had heard something about disqualification last season. So we bought the Silver NFT, and then we hacked the game for the first Snake game with the 69-69 score to try to like cause Silver team to get disqualified. But then we planted an anonymous voice message that made it look like it came from Team Purple to come snipe Silver, so that Purple and Silver teams would start some sort of chaos or beef.
Wow.
And to stir the pot outside of our core teams while we're building our actual team alliances.
And one of the reasons that we did that was Nico actually hacked the score in his account. And so we had to like quickly come up with a plan to sort of like get the team off his back and instead be like, look at this other player who like did this crazy thing. And, Silver and Purple are really at it, and just try to like stir some chaos to avoid Nico having a target on his back.
Wow. Okay. You guys were in it to fuck everyone else over and not so much to win yourselves. That's a strategy. That's a strategy. I also see Mike in the live stream. Mike had my favorite campaign that he posted early on for the finals. I think it was something to the effect of like wanting to donate all of his money to animal shelters to help dogs and cats, which I love animals. And so I was like so ready to vote for Mike, but someone sniped him last minute. Will, what was your strategy going in? Did all of you play season 1, by the way? No. None of you did?
Nope.
That's wild. Okay, so Will, did you have a strategy going in? Did you observe at least season 1 from the sidelines, or like what was your knowledge before going in?
Yeah, so I watched it go down. At least like I saw that like Christian was a big figure from season 1, and they were winning immunity challenges, and I saw other things go down. And so I had a general understanding. I played a lot of Survivor actually in college. This was very different than that. I think I'm going to do a thread about like how Survivor doesn't exactly scale based on the voting system. I think the 1 vote you're out is just brutal. And
yeah, I agree.
It's way too brutal. And once I realized that could be abused, like I just started sniping people. So that's actually probably a good time to confess that I was the one that sniped Katy.
Oh. I was way. I can't believe you just got that. Katy, how do you feel,
so
Katy?
Oh my God, I'm honored. I'm honored because Will was on my team. And we were chatting about how we're going to play Valorant together after this. So this is pretty epic. Hats off, Will. Yeah.
Nico, how much money did you pay Will to say that?
I'm a huge Survivor fan, and I don't know if anybody else besides Will or anyone listening loves Survivor as much, but early game Survivor, it's all about playing clean and maintaining your voting block throughout the game. And then the game strategy progressed later on in later seasons to be much more fluid and to identify big threats and also manage your own threat level. And so I wanted to come in, I wanted to play an epic game, I wanted to compete, I wanted to push myself to the most possible level that I could in terms of like all of these different cabals that I was being added to and, you know, do the lay low strategy. But ultimately, like, it's a huge honor to be voted out. And thank you, Will, for that intel.
Confession.
So yeah, the reason for it is like, and I realized this halfway through, that I didn't actually know who the big targets were on the other teams. And I actually wasn't incentivized to keep people on my team around because they couldn't save me. At that point in the time, like having an alliance doesn't help you. If you get a vote, you're done. And so I didn't know who to vote from the other teams because it's just like a random list of names. So I only know who to vote from my team, which I think ideally they can fix in season 3. So you're actually like incentivized to keep your friends around instead of just like not.
Yeah. Eva, did you have a strategy going in?
Not really. And I think I played naively. Like I was just having a good old time. And people started talking about endgame pretty early on. And I was like, what is that? I don't really know what to expect. And it was really only around the end when it unlocked for me just how deceptive everybody was. And like realizing, oh, that conversation was actually them getting information. Oh, that was like, it was just this whole blow up, at least within our tribe. And so in the end, it was us sort of realizing, I guess the end game was like a strategy. It was realizing that the jury is the one that decides who wins. It's not really just about sort of like who has lasted the longest. And so we realized that we could probably rally everybody around something better than sort of the deceptive, manipulative winners or whales. Although like we didn't really know who was in the final 42. Because
Right.
I think at that point we had heard some people, but like nobody had started canvassing yet.
Yeah, for sure. I guess like my confession is Eva and I were in the same tribe from day one. And I was very much like online the whole time and read all the messages and was everywhere. I just like was like very much a lurker. And I definitely got the sense that this was probably your first time playing and you were just having a good time, Eva. But I saw everything that happened in the chat. And I know like you were surprised to find out that I was even in the same tribe as you because I didn't really play much as my real identity in the beginning. It wasn't until the tribes merged at the end because in our original tribe, I didn't have that many IRL friends in my tribe. So I didn't think it would be advantageous to play as myself and just like put a target on my back, you know, and not really have any like real alliances there. So I played as my catfish more, and we've actually interacted so much more than you think, and that's my big confession.
Yeah, I don't know who you are.
Exactly. But Will, you kind of started talking about this a little bit, how like you really don't like the one vote and you're out thing. I'm curious to hear from all of you, like how would you restructure the game, I guess, in the future if you could like give feedback to the CTG team and change certain things about the game, like what would it be? And Will, I guess starting with you, like the eliminating the possibility of like one person getting voted out. I know we had DM'd about it a little bit too. Like what mechanism would you put in place to that?
Yeah. First, I would lock transfers on the final round. So like even my strategy would have been blocked. I feel like it should have been committed to before the final round. Like if I put it in the multi-sig, then people would have been like, all right, we know what he's doing, but I could hide, which was probably not great. So blocking transfers on the final round would have been good. And then I don't know exactly how it played down, but I think it'd be cool instead of getting voted out after merge, you have to get voted in, or throughout the course of the season, you can every night you can vote one person onto the next round and you can't vote for them again and it can't be yourself. And so you have to vote for 10 different people to pass down. And so therefore you need people to vote for you. Like you need to get like a homie to pass you on. I think that'd be better for incentivizing like friendships and like sticking together and stuff like that.
Yeah, I do think it got kind of contentious towards the end where like actually contentious, not just like we're playing a game and, you know, like we all want to win sort of thing. But especially like with the finals, I saw a lot of controversy with 733. You guys got hit with a lot of stuff, Eva. And then I saw a lot of controversy with Ted. I think those were kind of like the main people that got a lot of like actual hate and bullying, which is never cool. But yeah, I do think like reversing the mechanism of instead of voting off people to like, you have to get a vote to stay in, that incentivizes people to like try harder to form genuine relationships and alliances and partnerships and stuff like that. So I like that. What about from the rest of you? Like, what would you change or what feedback would you give the CTG team?
I think what they were talking about earlier around not showing the votes and letting people be saved, I think that was a really good mechanic they can continue to build on. We in Aqua Tribe played really closely the whole way. And I think most of Aqua Tribe was really loyal to each other within the tribe. And we had one night where I think we saved 2 people, just coordinated. They got on there. Everybody's like, don't panic. We got you. We're going to coordinate the votes. And we were able to save both of them. And I think that was a good mechanic they can continue to build on.
I think something that could be really interesting, I haven't really thought through all the logic of how this could work, but having different people vote at different periods of time, like you're in this specific voting block. And then if you really are playing deceptively, you have to even play harder with better strategy. It's like kind of known what period of time you're voting within. I think that could add, like an interesting element, but I'm not quite sure I've thought it completely through.
Definitely. And also like with Survivor, the way that immunity idols can be played is pretty cool, where you can play it on behalf of somebody else. That would be cool to be able to have an immunity idol and then literally save somebody at some point during the vote without them even knowing, maybe even that you saved them. And then people can take credit for different things or like have some discussion about that. That can make
That's similar to Joshua Zero-X Joshua just said in the chat. He thinks the mechanic should be each player gets a vote for and a vote against, and you have to pick one to use. That way you could either vote someone off or you could save somebody. So that's kind of like related to your immunity idol thing, but instead like everyone has the option. You can vote one vote for or against, and you can exercise. I think that would be, I like that. I think that would be an interesting mechanic. Eva, did you have any thoughts on that front?
Yeah, 2 things that come to mind is resurrections would be cool. So kind of like the saving, but someone actually on our tribe photoshopped a fake resurrection and it psyops everybody, but that would be cool. And then the second would be just playing around more with the NFT parameters, because I think that the fact that everything is a token just really makes everything way more game theoretic. But you could have things like you can only have a jury NFT that actually has a vote if you also have a player NFT in that wallet. Basically ways to like eliminate the Sybil attacking a little bit, although that's not fully possible, but you could just create these mechanics where it would be harder for whales to exist, or maybe limiting the number of jury NFTs that have voting power per wallet, that kind of thing.
Reflecting back on your gameplay, I know some of you, like Nico and Katy, had a very clear strategy throughout the game. Like Eva was there for a good time. Like if you were to play again in season 3, how would you change your strategy? Like what were the biggest lessons you learned from the game this time around that you would apply to your strategy in a future season?
I don't know if I would actually change anything, because at least on my side, what it came down to was like how likable the final narrative was. And I think if you end up being too strategic and too mischievous, that actually plays against you, even if you are sort of in a winning position. So I think being genuine throughout the game is actually what's most important.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think you played a really good game throughout the whole season, since we were together the whole time and was just watching everything from the sidelines. But yeah, I thought you played a very just naturally genuine game. So kudos to you for that. And you won. So that speaks to that strategy. What about the rest of you? What were like some of the big lessons learned? Would you change your strategy up for next season or do the exact same thing?
I guess it depends on the game mechanics, but let's just say it's the same exact thing. I definitely am going to have to go with anonymous wallet. I didn't really think about like until like halfway through that people would spin up fake Twitter accounts and somehow they had like 300 followers. I don't know how they got the following that they did in that time, but like that's probably the route I'm going to have to go to.
Start building now.
You people can understand who you are. You can tell like you're still a person, and it still could be like your same personality, but taking out the context, because if it is the same format, then I mean I'm probably going to get sniped just for being too visible.
For sure.
So I have to go that route.
For sure. Yeah. Nico and Katy, what about you guys? You guys had the fieriest gameplay coming in. Would you do it again or change it up?
Totally. We definitely have to play anonymous. If you're going to play if you're going to play hard, like play the villain arc, you have to go anonymous the next season. Or if you just in general, if you've played, I think, and people know your play style or something, or they think that you have knowledge or experience from a past season as you did, you got to be able to kind of hide underneath that. And I think I maybe have a different take on some of like the hard play style. To Katy's point about Survivor earlier, with the later seasons kind of favoring more of like who played the hardest game, and the earlier seasons kind of favoring like the person that was the most like how you treat people in real life, like the most honest, nice person. I think that as that develops, depending on how other people play the game, it'll become more difficult for people to make it to the end playing a clean game, because there's going to be more people that are like, if they make it to the end and I have to argue with somebody who's like really likable and everybody agrees, like, this is how we should all treat each other in real life and stuff, like, there's no way I'm winning at all. So like, they're going to become more targets. And I almost think that that's part of the most interesting parallel or overlap with crypto and blockchain and this game style, is that any sort of differing strategy like that gets arbitraged in the game. And then you get to see both of those things almost in a way that kind of guarantees both play styles will continue to play against each other over time.
Yeah, I can see that. Katie?
I think it'd be really interesting to partner up with the people that are my biggest enemies right now.
Like anonymously?
You think you can gain their trust again?
Maybe.
Yeah, I actually think, I know everybody calls this like the crypto survivor. I actually think this game, at least this season, reminded me a lot more of The Circle, if any of you have watched that. Just because it's like all online, like it all takes place over texting. I think in that game too, you can vote someone, like one person can eliminate someone from the game with one vote. But I kind of tried to like play that game a little bit, where I was in DMs with people, like trying to form alliances and like open up with people, like people I didn't know that like I felt like I vibed with. But yeah, I do think it's a fine line between being really nice to people and being a really likable character versus not to the extent where you feel threatening to other people. Like also at the same time, laying low enough that people don't feel threatened by you. And that's an art, I think. An art and a science probably. But
100%.
Last thing, I did want to get a confession out of all of you. And some of you have confessed already. Will, excellent confession. So you're off the hook. Nico, Katie, I don't think you guys have, well, I guess you guys have sort of confessed to your gameplay, which is like pretty spicy, but if you guys have any other confessions about your gameplay, and Eva too, I mean, Eva, I think you really did play a really clean game, so I don't know if you have any confessions, but if you do have any confessions about like something maybe dirty you did during the game, we'd love to hear it.
I can share. I didn't do anything, I think, super dirty, but I was strategic about being half anon. So I didn't combine my Twitter on chain, but then in the streets and in the spreadsheets, I like said who I was. And I think that actually worked to my advantage, because in the chats, unless you're like in the spreadsheets, you don't actually know who the doxxed Telegram chat person is unless you're like connecting them. But then in the end, I think it worked against me because people still wanted to vote off all the anonymous players. That was like a strategy for a lot of the game. So that's just like a choice to make. But I heard Dylan talk about how people transferred the NFT back and forth. And so I guess I could have brought my identity to light later. So maybe that's like a strategy to use next time.
Yeah, I had enough. So the one I probably feel the worst about too. So I was 100% completely loyal to Aqua Tribe. And so that was sort of like going into it. I was like, I'm going to 100% stay loyal to Aqua Tribe, but I'm going to wreak chaos everywhere else. Like that's going to be my play strategy or my play style for the game. And at the point of the merge, Richie had introduced me to his partner, Cynthia, who was working or had a lot of intel from the Silver team post like chaos through their fallout with other stuff that happened. And he said, she's super trustworthy. She has the intel. She comes in and starts working with our leaders to build the coordinated hit list of inactive accounts. And I'm just chatting up with her, like kind of getting the intel from that stuff. And I'm like, this is great. This is going to be like a cross-tribe partnership. This is a really good ally to have as we've merged together. First night goes awesome. We take out all the inactives, super coordinated between the two tribes. Second night, it's silence the whole vote. And then in the last like 5 minutes, it's just everybody from both teams that's ever said anything in chat or has ever been in voice chat or anything, just like completely get nuked. And the whole time I'm like, what is going on? And we're in this DM together, Cynthia and I have this realization. I'm like, she's playing the clean game. Like she's totally coordinated cross tribes through the merge. She hasn't gotten hit yet. She's totally going to make it to the end and she could 100% win this. I have no choice strategically than to take her out right now. So in the last, like, 30 seconds, I throw the vote and I was like, I feel like an actually horrible human right now. But like
that's pretty dirty.
That's the strat I'm playing. So that's my confession there. And then I just wanted to say, I think it's kind of funny how like random some of the votes can be. The last night I'm scrolling through and I had to pick somebody on the last night and I literally just didn't have anyone that I knew on the board. and I saw somebody's avatar was Ash Ketchum from Pokemon, and my avatar is James from Team Rocket.
Oh my god, you voted up Jonah? That was Jonah.
I'm like,
no.
it's fitting that Team Rocket takes out Ash Ketchum. And he
Oh
got
my
the
god.
avatar, which is so
Who
weird.
knew Ash would be a controversial character? That's like literally not a controversial PFP at all. Like, you could have, like, I thought you were going to say like a Milady or like something. Like literally anything other than Ash. Wow, I can't believe you took out Jonah too.
And then we took out Dracula with the Silver Assassin.
Yeah, I will say Bomik and I were working to get Traff out because he was playing 2 teams. He was playing Silver and Green. And we're like, no, out. Bomik, I have to give credit to for that. And then I noticed that...
Did you vote him out, by the way? He really wants to know.
Yes, I did, because he was a huge threat. It's funny, Bomik and I were both added to 2 separate Cabal chats. And we were like, what the hell do we do? Like, what are we going to do about this? And we were in it till the end. But then Mr. Screenshotter, Bomik, was like sharing screenshots all around. And I was like, this is a liability. I can't. And also I had a suspicion that Bomik, Richie, and Elevate were all working together because there was a lot of communication happening in one-on-one chats that started to be reflected in how they were communicating in larger group settings. And so I realized, I was like, I feel like I'm on the outside of that. And these guys are all playing like a super likable, similar game style to me. And then when I heard Elevate's voice on the Boys Club podcast and matched it to his voice inside of our Convergence chat with Pink and Green, I was like, Logos, Elevate. But I had no idea that Elevate was the foundation. So that was my other hit.
Oh, nice. You took out the foundation. That's kudos to you for that. That's a big shout out. Wow. I'm like speechless because so many things just happened and my mind is blown. Hopefully nobody come after anyone on this podcast. Nobody cancel anyone. Everyone be nice. No bullying. Thank you for your confessions. I really appreciate you. All of you guys coming on here and sharing your gameplay. Hopefully giving people some ideas about how they can play next season. Things not to do as well. Or at least at a minimum, give people something to think about. So thank you all so much. Do any of you have any final thoughts you want to leave people with before we wrap up?
It was super fun. Thank you all so much. And Diana, thanks for hosting.
Yeah, of course.
It's a game. Have fun. Love all the energy that came together for people to put money towards a good cause too. And I think we're both stoked at the final outcome there. And yeah, thanks for having us on.
Awesome. Yeah, it was super fun. It is a game. Hopefully people won't take it too seriously and won't take it to their IRL lives, understanding it is just a game. Congrats again to all of you, especially to Eva for the huge win and for all the good that you're doing with the money. And Will, I'd love to see you continue in your efforts to create cool, decentralized projects. Always love to see that. And Nico and Katy, I didn't even ask, are you guys back together? Is your relationship saved?
Thanks to Will.
Yeah.
Thanks to Will. Will, I hope you got a good paycheck from Nico for
it's
saying
on the side. Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will release this sometime this weekend. Thanks everybody for tuning into the live stream, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you.